From Deloitte Tax and Legal Japan, welcome to the Japan Perspective. This is a podcast where we speak to specialists from across Deloitte to discuss the latest business issues impacting foreign multinational companies in Japan. I'm your host, Marie Kodal. Today, I'm pleased to welcome our guest, Naoyuki Kano-san. Kano-san is a managing director in our indirect tax group and advises large Japanese and foreign companies on their global trade and customs issues in Japan. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the latest report from the Japan Customs Authority, released in November of 2024, which highlights recent trends in customs audit results for the administrative year from July 2023 to June 2024. Kano-san, thank you very much for joining us today. Before we go into this recently released Japan Customs Audit Report, could you tell us what a typical customs audit looks like?
Thank you for having me, Mari. During audits, the Customs Authority typically reviews importers' commercial systems and processes, records, and stock to improve compliance. This means having the value, origin, and classification of their goods reviewed by the customs authorities to ensure that the declarations are correct and the correct amount of import taxes has been paid and calculated and paid. If any declaration is found to be incorrect, importers are required to prepare an amended declaration and pay underpaid import tax along with penalties.
Thank you. So, for importer companies listening in today, the first thing that may come to mind when discussing customs audits is, when will I be audited? So, when or how often can companies expect to be audited by the Japan Customs Authority?
The answer is anytime. In the most recently closed administrative year, over 3,500 importers were audited. This suggests, on average, the Japan Customs Authority initiated as many as 10 audits every day. The number of audits has been steadily increasing in the recent years due to the growing volume of imports into Japan, and this trend is expected to continue. That said, audits don't usually come without warning, unless a significant issue catches the attention of the customs authority, leading them to initiate an audit. Typically, the Japan Customs Authority issues an audit notification a couple of months in advance, although this lead time may not be sufficient for some companies to fully prepare. In some cases, companies may negotiate the timing of the on-site audit. For example, when they are busy dealing with tax audits or FIN closing during the proposed customs audit period. It's also important to note that from the statutory payment date, there is 5-year statutory period of limitations on the right of the customs authority to collect import taxes owed. This means companies can expect to be audited approximately once every 5 years.
Thank you, Kano-san. You noted that audits usually come with a couple of months' notice, though I can see how that timeline might still feel a bit tight for some companies. Could you walk us through what kind of information is typically included in audit notification?
Yes, in an audit notification, you'll typically find important information like the audit date, location, number of auditors, period under audit, documents and records to be reviewed, and so on. On-site audits usually last anywhere from a couple of days to a week, although they can also take longer, depending on things like volume of imports and complexity of transactions. So generally, based on the audit date, companies can get an idea of the audit time frame. It is also common for discussion with auditors to continue even after the on-site audit, if there are issues that still need to be resolved. The audit location is always the importer's office, and auditors will expect a dedicated room for them to review documents and other records, but they'll never stay longer than your office hours. Typically, 2 to 3 auditors will visit, but sometimes more. based again on the volume of import activities and the complexity of transactions. The period under audit is generally the past 5 years, which aligns with the statute of limitations, so companies should be prepared to provide documentation and records covering this time frame. As for the documents and data to be reviewed, the scope can be quite extensive. The auditors review shipping or customs-related documents, as well as contracts, commercial documents, the various finance and accounting-related records to get a full understanding of the importer's business.
That sounds like a lot for companies to prepare. I imagine it can be overwhelming, especially for those going through the process for the first time. So, why are finance and accounting related documents reviewed as part of customs audit procedures?
Yes, the major focus is on customs variation, making sure the value declared upon importation accurately reflects the amount actually paid for the imported goods, based on settlement records, as required under the Customs Tariff Act. Sometimes there are other payments or expenses that need to be factored into the customs value, like royalties, retrospective transfer pricing adjustments, R&D costs, which all show in finance and accounting related records. In fact, all example cases in the customs audit report for the most recently closed administrative year are related to customs variation. The report also revealed some concerning figures. Over 120 billion yen in undeclared customs value, nearly 13 billion yen in unpaid import taxes, and more than 600 million yen in penalties. These amounts were all uncovered through audits conducted during the last administrative year. Besides variation, auditors will also look into tariff classification and country of origin to make sure the correct customs duty rate was applied upon importation.
Right. So, with so many areas subject to review, such as valuation, tariff classification, and origin, it must be quite a challenge for importer companies to stay fully prepared. With that in mind, then, are companies importing tax-free goods exempt from customs audits?
No, the companies importing duty-free goods can also be audited. The import consumption tax, which is 8% for food items and 10% for everything else, still applies, with only a few rare exceptions. Even though import consumption tax can often be recovered later through filing a consumption tax return, it must first be paid to Japan Customs Authority upon importation. In fact, according to the report, in the last administrative year, there was an increase in audits targeting companies importing duty-free goods, such as machines and equipment, pharmaceutical products, and motor vehicles.
Interesting. It sounds like companies need to be diligent regardless of the nature of their imports. Before we conclude today's episode, could you tell us how companies can best prepare for a potential customs audit?
Yes, having the right systems and processes in place is essential for responding to audits in an effective and efficient manner. Delays in providing information or inability to provide relevant documents can make the audit process even more challenging. To minimize the impact or disruption of an audit on a business, it is critical for importers to develop a clear action plan and take the right steps ahead of time. To support companies in achieving this, we provide a wide range of services that go beyond on-site audit support and preparation. We assist with reviewing and assessing system processes and documentation, conducting risk analysis, and running mock audits, as companies may find helpful. It's also worth noting that if an importer voluntarily submits an amended declaration before it receives an audit notification, penalties can be entirely avoided. Therefore, importers should be forthcoming in disclosing any incorrect declarations.
Right. So being proactive and transparent in resolving any issues could help companies cut down on penalties. All right. Thank you very much, Kano-san, for sharing your insights with us today. That concludes today's episode of the Japan Perspective. To our listeners, thank you. We hope you found today's discussion valuable. To share your feedback on this podcast, please visit our survey link in this episode's description section. You can find more episodes of the Japan Perspective on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. Thanks again and take care.